You know that feeling? You're just drowning in information. Every notification, every headline, every single opinion, it's this constant battle just to figure out what's real, what matters, and what's just noise. So how in the world do we find any clarity in all that chaos? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful mental model that can act as our compass, the general theory of cognitive triangulation. This quote from Albert it hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? We have access to a literally infinite amount of information. But our attention? Well, that's a resource that is very, very finite. It's pretty much the core problem of being alive right now. And that leads us right to the central question we're tackling in this explainer. With these endless streams of data coming at us from every direction, how do we possibly find clarity? How do we build an understanding of the world that's actually solid and reliable? To even begin to solve this, we first have to understand why our old ways of thinking are, frankly, failing us. So that brings us to our first section. We're going to see just how badly our old models are cracking under all this pressure. This right here highlights a huge shift in perspective. You see, the old way of thinking about knowledge was kind of like filling up a bucket. You learn the facts, you store them away, and you're done. But in today's world, that's just not going to cut it. The new approach sees knowledge as more of a dynamic equilibrium. It's something that needs constant attention, constant maintenance, and adjustment. So, if the old model is broken, what's the solution? Well, this is where our hero concept comes in, a new model called cognitive triangulation, and it's based on the work of Albert Tan. So what exactly is this general theory of cognitive triangulation? To put it simply, it's the idea that real, deep understanding isn't some single, fixed point of truth that you just arrive at. Nope. Instead, it's a dynamic balance, a constant dance between three different, really crucial perspectives. And what's the whole point of all this? What's the goal? It's to achieve something Tan calls sustainable intellectual fidelity. Now, I know, that's a bit of a mouthful, but it basically just means building a worldview that is both accurate and durable, one that can adapt and hold up over time as new information keeps coming our way. And this entire framework, it's built on a surprisingly simple foundation. It all comes down to just three core pillars. So let's break them down one by one. Let's get into the first one. Pillar 1 is all about seeking truth. This is what Tan calls the foundation of objective fidelity. And you can think of this as your anchor to reality. This whole pillar is really about asking one simple but incredibly powerful question. What are the verifiable facts? It's about grounding yourself in what can actually be proven, what's objective, what's real, and separating all of that from mere opinion or speculation. But, of course, facts alone are not enough. And that brings us to pillar 2, staying curious. If truth is the anchor, then curiosity is the engine. It's the force that drives us to look beyond what we already think we know. The questions that drive this pillar are all about pushing your own boundaries. You're asking, what else could be true here? And maybe even more importantly, what don't I know yet? This is all about actively seeking out new information, challenging your own assumptions, and just staying open. Okay, and now for our third and final pillar, finding elegance. Tan calls this heuristic optimization, but that's just a fancy way of saying we need to find the simplest, most useful explanation that fits the facts. It's a search for the most elegant solution. This pillar asks a really crucial question. What is the most elegant and useful explanation? So once you have the facts and you've explored different possibilities with your curiosity, this is about finding the simplest, most coherent model that makes sense of all the data. It's about choosing the clean explanation over a needlessly complicated one. It's about finding clarity. So we have our three pillars: truth, curiosity, and elegance. But the real power isn't in any single one of them on its own. The magic happens when they all work together. And this brings us to our final section, the balancing act. This lays it all out pretty perfectly, right? You've got truth asking, what are the facts? You have curiosity asking, what don't I know yet? And you have elegance asking, what's the best explanation? It's the constant tension and interplay between these three questions that actually leads to real understanding. So the key takeaway here is this. The goal is not to become a master of just one of these pillars. You don't want to be just a fact checker or just an explorer or just a synthesizer. No, the real power comes from the constant, active balancing act between all three. It's a continuous process, a loop. You find a fact. which makes you curious about what it implies, which leads you to find a simple model to explain it, and then that model points you toward new facts to investigate. It just keeps going. So why does all this matter? What's the bottom line? Well, applying this model is how you distinguish that signal from the noise we were talking about at the very beginning. It helps you build a much more durable, robust understanding of pretty much any topic. It creates that sustainable intellectual fidelity. And most importantly, it moves you from that static, bucket-filling idea of knowledge to truly dynamic thinking. So let's end with a challenge for you. Think about your own habits of mind. Do you tend to lean too heavily on one of these pillars? Are you a fact finder who sometimes forgets to be curious? Or maybe a big picture thinker who doesn't always check the data? The real question to take with you is this: how can you better balance your own cognitive triangle?